Story 1. People who say my name 30 times in a sentence. I tell you what, Dan. That's a great idea, Dan. Why don't we do that, Dan? I'll call you Dan. Okay, Dan? Tell me that person took a sales course. A really outdated one that teaches the belief that the sweetest sound in the world is hearing your own name. Story 2. People who simply won't take the blame when they're in the wrong, and those who act like they do but turn it around to make you feel like you're in the wrong. Story 3. So, I'm old, 66 years old to be exact. At this point, I've learned that trust is no longer a viable consideration. I know that sounds cynical, but it's kind of the opposite. I've learned that people are more fragile than they make themselves out to be. I've learned that people are more flawed and haunted than they present. I've learned that people are more deceptive than they mean to be. I've learned that people have needs and desires that they will do almost anything to achieve. I've learned that childhoods shape people in ways we still don't understand. I've learned that many people don't have an active conscience, usually because of their childhoods. I've learned that once a person is locked into the worldview that suits their views, needs, fears, and biases, convincing them to look at things differently is a lost cause. I've learned that certain hurts cannot be undone with therapy or drugs. Above all, I've learned that trusting another person wholeheartedly is a childish quest. Instead, I would suggest that we enjoy what other people bring to our lives while also being brutally honest with oneself when red flags present themselves in a friendship or romantic relationship, something that I am very poor at myself, and be trustworthy oneself. Sorry that this is the best advice I can give you. Story 4. Charismatic individuals. Maybe it's the hypervigilant speaking, but there's a type of smile and body language that sets me on edge. It's almost like someone is too smooth and too likable. It gives serial killer vibes, almost uncanny valley. I don't meet people like that often, but when I do, it makes my skin crawl. Story 5. If you work with someone who never shares what they know, don't trust them. Hoarding information and withholding it from coworkers is an ugly quality. What do I mean? If you have a coworker who knows how a process works at your company, but they never teach anyone else how to do it, they're hoarding information for their perceived job security. Don't trust them and don't be them. Story 6. People who think things should be only their way. It doesn't matter how much you try or even if you do things perfectly, it's never going to be enough for them. Story 7. I feel really distrustful of people who don't like animals. Not people who happen to not have a cat or dog, but those who seem to not understand that other people love them and consider them family. Story 8. Narcissists genuinely do not care about other people and only view individuals as something from which they can benefit. The lies, the manipulation, the gaslighting are all dreadful, and it is the victims who end up suffering the most. Story 9. People who seem to have drama with everyone in their life. My husband's daughter at 23 always had drama with someone. Her mom, her aunt, her other aunt, her classmate, her roommate, her ex-boyfriend, her roommate's mom. She was always the victim in whatever situation. The lesson learned is that when someone burns bridges with most people in their life or has drama that's not their fault, they are the problem. It didn't take long until she decided we were the next people in her life she needed to attack, and she went after us in a big way. Once again, she was able to victimize herself and get attention from her next victim, who was her boss, mentor, and friend at the time. And guess what? They too had a falling out and no longer speak. Story 10. Pretty much all of them, to be honest. You kind of have to know whom to trust with which things, and whom not to trust with which things. People tend to repeat behavior. I specifically do not trust people with a lot of power and wealth, or people who prioritize status. I don't trust people who prioritize politeness and white lies, but that's a completely different level. I just know they are not that genuine and not to take them too seriously. People who flake, trust they will flake again, but it doesn't mean they're a bad person. Story 11. A subtle signal, but if someone comes up to me with a cigarette behind their ear, I am at least 3 times likelier to distrust whatever comes out of their mouth. Story 12. Anyone who is making a commission from something I'm buying from them, it doesn't matter how sincere or upfront they are, I just can't ever bring myself to trust them. Story 13. Fake people who are obvious in how they treat people they view as lesser, and those with status exhibit a noticeable change in their behavior towards different individuals. Individuals over 30 who lack critical thinking skills often feel the pressure to conform and will join the majority in disliking someone. Fake people who are subtle in their actions go unnoticed by most. Story 14. Gossip. The very bad ones are the kind that actively stick their noses in business that they have nothing to do with, or, even worse, try and even just sniff out information that does not concern them whatsoever. Story 15. People who pry for personal information. Usually, genuinely curious people can hold a nonchalant conversation with you and let you have control over what you reveal about yourself. They might go so far as to forget these intimate details later on because it doesn't matter to them. That's a good thing. People who pry, however, are very blunt or lack any tact when it comes to talking to you. Also, if you don't give them the answer they want to hear, they will essentially ask you via other means to spite your annoyance. It's essentially because they want to gossip about you. Story 16. I don't trust people who don't take responsibility for their actions. They are weasels, and if they can throw you under the bus, they will. These people are especially scary when they are in charge because you might lose your job over their mistake, even if you help them with something that failed. Story 17. People who wear bow ties. Weddings and special occasions are fine and are the only acceptable time to wear them. Otherwise, I think the person is too pretentious and attention-seeking to be taken seriously or trusted. I'm kind of joking, but kind of not. Story 18. People who judge others for showing emotion. I encountered someone at work who was acting childishly upset because he didn't appreciate that a woman who won a gold medal was crying. I was very close to confronting him and potentially getting myself into trouble. Just because you still imagine your difficult and abusive parents judging you when you show emotion doesn't mean everybody else does. Story 19. I'm having a hard time with people who don't show any affection towards animals, such as cats, dogs, etc. I'm not an animal rights activist or anything like that, but to me, the most natural thing in the world is this. I see an animal, I pet it. Story 20. People who never have anything good to say about anyone. I have a coworker who is constantly bad-mouthing my other coworkers behind their back. Like, most of my coworkers are good, hardworking people, and a lot of them have been very nice and helpful towards me. Yet, to this one girl, they are all stupid, bad at their jobs, disorganized, and so on. She is nice to my face, but I fully believe she says the same things about me when I'm not around. Story 21. People who do not trust other people based on a dog's negative reaction. I don't know why your dog doesn't like me. I pay my taxes and treat people like I ought to, yet you write me off entirely based on your dog's reaction to me. I am a human. I am not perfect, but I am not evil. Story 22. Older than 25 and still has anger management issues. Talks non-stop about other people. Has no actual hobby, and no, scrolling on social media is not a hobby. Likes the crazy and quirky type of character for the wrong reasons. People who can't have a civilized argument, they'll go for personal attacks so they look superior. Anyone who gets angry at you when you just don't want to do something with them, which leads to you justifying every single action you take. Story 23. Next level liars who can't even admit they're lying when evidence is presented that proves they are most definitely lying. Can't trust a single thing that comes out of their mouth after that. Story 24. People who work in real estate or car sales and are successful in their field have to have a natural aptitude for exaggeration and little to no empathy to do well in those professions. Story 25. No one. I believe in the wisdom of General Mattis. Be polite, be professional, but have a plan to kill everybody you meet. In public, I practice this policy, and so does my wife. It's considered paranoia until the situation goes awry. Then it's called preparation. Story 26. People who are unkind to those that are considered beneath them, whether it be the poor, children, minorities, or anyone else, are not showing true kindness. If you only reserve your kindness for people you deem as good as you are, then I do not want anything to do with you. Story 27. I don't trust anyone. Trust is earned. You always have to sift through what type of information you share with everyone. Some things you just have to take with you to the grave. Story 28. Authority figures of any kind, really. I've made more than enough bad experiences, and at this point, it's a clear pattern. I presume anyone in a position of power to be guilty until proven innocent. I still treat them in a polite and respectful manner, but I keep my guard up and try not to tell them anything that can be used against me. Despite having met hundreds of authority figures over the course of my life, I would have serious trouble naming even 3 of them that never behaved in a completely unacceptable way or showed blatant disrespect towards the people they have power over. Even the ones who do earn my trust will often eventually do something to make me regret trusting them. Story 29. From my life experience of 39 years on this earth, Christians, car salesmen, and social workers, along with their supervisors and directors, stand out. I am a social worker, for the record. Story 30. People who try to get too chummy too quickly. People who tell me stuff about themselves or other people that's either overly personal or off-topic. People who twirl their mustaches while sniggering. Story 31. Non-confrontational people. Yes, they're nice, but in my experience, they avoid being honest so that they can avoid conflict. It makes it very hard to trust people like that. Story 32. People who keep reminding you that they are trustworthy. The doofus down the street is well known for being disreputable. Won't stop telling me about how trustworthy he is. Story 33. People who are overly sensitive. Also, people who tend to adopt the personality of others around them or become overly competitive. Pick-me behavior types. Story 34. People who can't be authentic. People who are incapable of expressing emotions and shame you for it. Huge egos. Manipulative liars. Control freaks and people who need to dominate the entire room. Story 35. I trust no one. It's as simple as that because of being let down so many times. I've given up on the thought of people being decent, kind, respectful, and trustworthy. So no, not a single soul. Story 36. Humans. Really, humans make the worst people. That's true in 3 ways. 1. The worst people are humans. 2. Bad humans make other people worse. Karens and Darrens. 3. Bad people have babies and raise them to be bad. Story 37. People who assume the worst about other people without any evidence. My mother-in-law has been doing this to me for 20 years. I am a good person and finally don't care about what she thinks. She assumes the most negative thing she can, adds her own interpretation, and talks badly about me to the entire family when I'm not around, of course. There are no consequences for all the damage done to my marriage, etc. The worst part is, my spouse has allowed this to continue by never setting boundaries for fear of losing his favor with her, all the perks. Weak. This would never happen in my family because they're loving. Any one of us would shut it down at the table in a tactful manner, and it would only take one time. No cowards. No talking behind someone's back, especially without evidence. It's disgusting and low class. Story 38. Those who cannot come up with their own thoughts or opinions and only use talking points they have heard from others. I am not going to trust you if you are just an oversized audio speaker. Story 39. Those that seem too perfect. The better they outwardly appear to be, the less I trust them. Every single person on this planet has some issue. The more they appear to be perfect, the darker their issue seems to be. Always on time, always ready for some business meeting, always smiling or nearly picture perfect, everything organized. That's the closest you can get to a serial killer. Also, anyone that jumps to manipulation tactics early on, for little to no reason, or anyone that seems to always be the victim in their stories, yet seldom talks of themselves making mistakes. Anyone that doesn't take accountability. Story 40. Grown, married men who flirt with female coworkers and discuss inappropriate things about said female coworkers with their male coworkers or friends, yet don't say anything at all about their wives to their male coworkers or friends. Story 41. Overly agreeable people. I had a boss like this recently. Every week when I spoke with him, he made it sound like everything was great and he loved what I was doing. Then one day, he pulled the rug out from under me and fired me for a bunch of made-up reasons. I mean, what the actual heck? So now I am suspicious of agreeable people. I am on high alert that they have a hidden evil streak lurking somewhere, just waiting to come out. Story 42. Those who need everyone to like them, especially strangers they just met, find themselves in a challenging situation. I have dated two people like this, and it is painful to watch someone work harder for the affection of strangers rather than the affection of those who are already their friends. Story 43. Who do I wholeheartedly trust? Nobody. I don't believe anyone on earth now or ever is worthy of that. Everyone has degrees of trust based on a number of factors, the utmost important one being their history of trustworthiness from your perspective. That being said, when someone betrays that trust or at least gives cause to doubt it, their sincerity in apologizing and the genuine effort put into restoring trust over time speaks volumes of their character and whether or not they earn trust. The same goes for those that give little to no effort. They didn't really care in the first place. Story 44. People who know they are right all the time. Drug users. Many pastors and priests have been proven to be perverts. Some are preaching politics. Clearly identified and proven mythomaniacs. Salespeople. Insurance agents. Some beggars are very skilled at their trade. Phone scammers and marketers. Any hint of spamming. Politicians in general.